Bloody Roar Hyper Beast Duel is next. I played a little bit of this one as a kid, but I was introduced with and played a lot of Bloody Roar 2 back then and was given a pirate copy of this game a little later, which I had to play in black and white thanks to it being a copy of the American version and my bedroom TV back then not supporting 60Hz. Buying this legit copy over 20 years later, this is my first time actually getting to play it in colour. While I'm at it, because this is the first PS1 game I've recorded from it, I didn't know every PS3 was backwards compatible with PS1 games. I never had a PS3 myself until 2019, after I got a PS4, so I thought it was just those that could also play PS2 games. But yeah, I didn't play too much as a kid. I always preferred the second game. I'm fairly certain I never even touched half of the game's playable characters until I had to for this video. The series focuses on a group of people known as zoanthropes, people who could transform into human-animal hybrids. Their existence is currently unknown to the general public, but there is one corporation that knows of them, Tylon. They kidnap zoanthropes and perform experiments on them to transform them into mind-controlled soldiers for use in invasions around the world. As for the gameplay, the series' big thing is the Beast Meter, which allows each character to transform into their beast form. They are stronger and gain some new moves, and when taking damage they keep an additional bit of white on their health bar that refills over time. But the bar depletes when taking damage, and taking a hit with an empty bar knocks that character out of beast mode. Apart from that, we have a punch button, a kick button, and throws with both. We have the button that activates beast mode that after the transformation becomes an additional attack button. Along with this are combos of pressing these three buttons in different orders, plus different attacks while running, jumping or holding different directions while pressing the buttons. There's also Rave, which puts the character into a state where they become faster with less recovery time between attacks, but at the cost of the beast meter rapidly depleting until empty. Personally, I didn't use it too much as I preferred to stay in beast mode as long as possible. It's not Tekken 3 levels of smooth, but I find it much more agreeable and easier to get into than a lot of the earliest 3D fighter games like the first Tekken or Virtua Fighter. Now let's move on to these characters, of which there are 8 plus one unplayable boss. To start with is the series' main character, Yugo Ogami, the Wolf. Yugo discovered he was a zoanthrope after hearing of his father's death. Yugo's father, Yuji, was a mercenary who was reported killed while at war in South America. Yugo finds his father's death suspicious, and his looking into it has him learn his father had ties to the Tylon Corporation. So Yugo sets out to find the only survivor of Yuji's unit, Gado, so that they can take on Tylon together and find out the truth. I had a bit of trouble getting used to Yugo, but I admit that was most likely because I hadn't played this game in over 2 decades, and last time I even played any game in the series was 12 years ago, and he was the first character I played as while I was getting used to the game again. But he is the main character, and as such he doesn't go too far in any extreme. Not the fastest, not the strongest, around the middle so that newcomers can get used to the game with him. As a character, so far I don't have much to say about Yugo. Because it has been so long since I was really into the series, when I was last invested I hadn't even reached double digits yet and now I'm 32, and having to get to know most of these characters all over again. But even as a kid, he wasn't one I played as too much, there were just other characters that caught my eye more. So far he is a pretty standard teenage main character out for revenge, but he has a few more games to make more of an impression. You can tell this is the mid-90s by looking at his outfit though. The denim jacket with torn off sleeves on top of the shirt is fine, but it's the baggy denim shorts on top of the second pair of shorts that are a bit too 90s for me. Not my favourite costume of his. Every character actually has 3 costumes, though for most it's just 3 palettes of 1 costume. Yugo's second outfit makes him shirtless and changes the colours. The orange jacket while shirtless is kind of where the second game will take him, but it works much better there. I would prefer this to his default, but the colours let it down. Blonde hair looks wrong on him to me, as do the bright white shorts. His third costume makes him look more like a biker, all leather with his shirt now sleeveless too. I prefer the default but think this is better than his second. Our next character is Alan Gado, the Lion. Gado was Yuji Ogami's best friend and part of the same mercenary unit. While on a mission, the unit was attacked by an army with genetically enhanced zoanthropes among them. The unit was destroyed and Gado lost the use of his eye. Despite Yuji being reported dead, Gado never saw his body. His search for the truth about Yuji's fate leads him to discover the Tylon Corporation and their actions, leading to him aiming to take them down himself. Gado is slower and more powerful than Yugo, with more aggressive looking attacks, but it's not to the level where he's unbearably slow. It was still early in my time playing the game, but I had a lot more fun playing as Gado than I did Yugo. His attacks look painful and feel satisfying to land. I was quite fond of his free kick combo, especially if I could land his jumping knee on the opponents and catch them in the air with it. As a kid, Gado was my favourite character. It was all based on being between 7 and 9 and from playing the second game. He was the final boss in the second game, and him being so easy to unlock made him possibly the first final boss I ever unlocked in a fighting game. Plus, in a fighting game where people transform into animals, the final boss becoming a lion, the king of the animal kingdom, made perfect sense to me. I just thought he was really cool in that game. What is surprising me coming back and reminding myself what the story actually is that Gato is not a villain. He's described as if he's the best guy ever. Kind-hearted, respectful, great leader, always putting his people first and fighting on the front lines with them, everyone adores him, no obvious character flaws. So I'm very curious to see why he's the final boss in Bloody Roar 2 if I ever get to that game. However, his outfits in this game whatever. Only the hair stands out, otherwise it feels like a very standard military fighting game dude with the bandana around the arm and the camo trousers. Second outfit is a palette swap. I prefer the second outfit's trouser colours, but brown hair doesn't look right on him. The third is alright, mixes things up by removing the camo and giving him a vest. Next up is a character who only appears in the first game. That statement is then followed by a couple asterisks for if I ever get to the second and third games. It's Bakuryu, the mole, real name Ryuzo Kato. A ninja employed by Tylon to sabotage their enemies and abduct other zoanthropes for use in Tylon's experiments. He himself was a willing test subject in the hopes the experiment would make him more powerful. Being a ninja, Bakuryu is a speedier and more acrobatic character than the previous two. Quicker and longer combos, flying kicks, flip kicks, but the big downside is weaker attacks, which is to be expected, but sometimes it can get a bit annoying jabbing someone with more claws and not seeing much damage from it. That, and despite being intended to be speedier, I felt like the wind-ups and some of his attacks went on a bit too long, so trying to do anything cool would end with even the slowest characters swatting me out of them. So in the end it balances out to him being okay to play as. This Bakuryu is probably my least favourite character in the game though. There's not much to his personality I feel, and I just think his visual design is a bit naff. The costume does nothing for me, and the hairstyle looks like he's trying so hard to look like Heihachi but doesn't have the length. I can see why his replacement in the next game looks nothing like him. As for his alternates, I guess the second looks a little better with the grey and red, but not by much. Following Bakuryu, we have another character who only appeared in this first game, and with no asterisks this time. It's Greg Jones, the gorilla. Greg doesn't really have much to do with the overall story of the series. He ran away from home in his youth and joined the circus, which was always his dream. He took over the circus when the last ringmaster retired, but the waning interest in the circus led to it going bankrupt and disbanding. Greg just wants to get his circus going again. Greg is both a powerhouse and the game's oddball character. He's not just strong, he's surprisingly fast too. But it's the oddball part that lets him down for me. Some of his attack animations are deliberately strange, and getting used to them and putting them to good use was something I struggled with. No wonder I wasn't too good at playing this game as a kid, as whenever I played this game back then, I would mainly play as the characters I recognised from the second game and ignore the others. Greg was the exception. He stood out to me and I liked him back then as a kid for two reasons. First is that he was a gorilla. Second was that his hat could be knocked off. I had never played a fighting game where a character's hat could be knocked off. The thought that it was possible in a game had never crossed my mind, so I was always fascinated by his hat falling off and just staying there on the ground while the rest of the fight went on. Apart from that, the first costume is fine. The second swaps his shorts for trousers, but apart from that, they're just basic palette swaps. Back to another series regular next with Alice Tsukagami, the rabbit. Alice was one of the unfortunate zoanthropes kidnapped by Tylon and experimented on, which is how her own powers were awakened. She was taught to fight in preparation for becoming a soldier, but escaped before she could be put through the brainwashing. However, her escape was only possible due to a young girl giving up her own chance at freedom to let her get away. Eventually, her worrying for the young girl becomes too much and she sets out to save her. Alice was a character I spent quite a bit of time with thanks to a certain unlockable, so I had no choice but to get used to her. She's another quicker but weaker character like Bakuryu, but I enjoyed Alice more. For one thing, her weaker attacks weren't irritatingly so, and her slower, stronger ones I found easier to land. I was especially a fan of her spinning jump punch. Although that running jump kick that flies miles above the opponent's head always did my head in when I did it by mistake. But the running backflip she does if she transforms while running was a favourite final blow of mine. She ended up being one of the quicker arcade mode completions. Not the quickest though. Alice wasn't a character I paid attention to as a kid, so like Yugo, she's one I'll have to get introduced to and build my opinion of her up from scratch again. I will say I'm not a fan of her outfit. Long sleeves with shorts, especially with jackets or coats, isn't something that looks good to me most of the time. Especially when those long sleeves are baggy and the shorts are that short. The third outfit is a little better with the stockings, it makes the long sleeves and shorts a bit less noticeable, but not by that much. Then we have another character who only appears in this game. For some reason he is referred to mostly by his beast form, Fox. His real name is Hans Torbermann. In terms of personality, Hans is Vega from Street Fighter, the same obsession with beauty and hatred for ugly things. He wants to be Vega so much he even made sure his voice actress had the surname Vega. Hans was abandoned as a child and lived in a slum, where his cruelty in fights earned him the nickname Fox. Despite working for Tylon as a kidnapper and assassin, sharing a unit with Bakuryu, he actually hates his zoanthrope form, finding it ugly. Fox is another fast but weak character, but sadly he's one I struggled with more than most of the other characters. He has similar issues I had with Bakuryu, but more. His attacks are very weak and the stronger are harder to land, either through wind up long enough I get hit or the movement during them making them a bit awkward to land. His playthrough was his second longest to complete, only being a minute faster than Greg's. For each fighting game, we always have that character, the one who you can't play as very well, but is also the one you have the hardest time fighting against when AI controlled. Fox is that character for me in this game. As a character, Fox is a fine Vega-like. I do find him the least memorable character in the game though, as in, if I had to name them all, his would come up last. It's not really his fault though. Half of the cast make regular appearances throughout the series, then for the half who are stuck to this game, 2 of those 4 have ties to other regulars. Just Greg and Fox don't, and Greg is a gorilla who can lose his hat, so he beats Fox. Outfit-wise, all 3 are pretty much the same and work for a character obsessed with his own beauty. I just don't get why his second outfit gives him a grey zombie-like skin tone. That one's my least favourite because I don't like the combination of green and orange. The first and third outfits are pretty much equal to me. Next is the last of the one-off characters, Mitsuko no Nomura, the Boar. Mitsuko has the simplest story of the lot. Her daughter was one of the many zoanthrope children abducted by Tylon, and so she's out to find and save her. Mitsuko is a very powerful fighter, but she also isn't as slow as you'd expect. The best comparison I could think of is Bass from Dead or Alive 2 onward. They're both wrestlers and have large frames, but aren't overly slow and can be played as perfectly well and have a good time without having to rely on grabs. And I definitely had a fun time with Mitsuko. As a kid, like Fox and the original Bakuryu, I never once even selected Mitsuko. As a kid, I was a fucking idiot. Mitsuko was so fun, by far the most fun character in the game for me. Everything is so satisfying to land, looks painful, and does good damage. The big swinging punch, the shoulder barge, the drop kicks, the grab and headbutt, the 4-hit headbutt combo as a Boar. For a first time playing as her ever, I got the quickest arcade clear as her. It's so bittersweet and frustrating to find this character that was so good and was right under my nose all this time, and know that she's never going to appear again. I can only imagine how she might have been in Bloody Roar 2. Unfortunately, Mitsuko was the least popular character in the game. The developers put out an official poll, 4 in fact. Favourite and most disliked, human and beast. And while Mitsuko's human form landed 3rd in most liked and her beast form 4th, both of her forms also came 1st in the most hated category, which the developers seemed disappointed by based on their response. But that page on the website is being Google translated and it translated the characters for Yugo as Yugoslavia, so make of that what you will. I don't know what made her so hated back then, considering the poll was done in 1998. And one of the character designers seemed to think it was due to her being a married woman based on the translation. Well, it may be along those lines. She is not what you would create in the 90s if you were trying to appeal to young boys. She's not conventionally attractive, she's large and muscular, and she's nearly 40 with no fighting game, stopped aging at 20 bullshit. But all these things that may have made her less popular with the target audience in the 90s make her stand out so much today. Could you imagine Tekken including a character like Mitsuko? The series that is desperate to kick out any woman approaching 30 or find a way to stop them aging? Dead or Alive? Virtua Fighter might, and maybe Mortal Kombat? Those are the only big ones I can think of. I think Mitsuko was a victim of being created in the wrong time. If Bloody Roar were to make a return today and she was in it, I think she'd be in with a much better chance of gaining a fanbase. Or maybe that's just wishful thinking from me, both that we'll get another game at all and that Mitsuko would have a chance of returning. As for costumes, they're all the same with different colours, but her default colours are the best to me. It shows who she is perfectly. Apart from being a zoanthrope, she herself is just a normal person living a normal life, going to work and trying to raise a child, and looks like one, brick shithouseness aside. I didn't expect her section to be the longest so far, but my surprise at how much I enjoyed her really brought a lot out of me. And then we have our final playable character, another series regular, Long Shin, the tiger, or Jin Long, I've seen both. As a child he ran away from home due to being neglected by his workaholic father after his mother and younger sister died close together. Using his martial arts skills together with his zoanthrope powers to get by, he's found by Tylon and enlisted as an assassin. He quickly became known as their best due to his ability to kill quickly without even needing a weapon. But he eventually grew to resent life as an assassin and hate being a zoanthrope, so he left the organisation. After threats to not leave didn't work, he's declared a traitor and is currently being hunted by Tylon. Maybe it's just my experience, but I find Long to be the bloody raw Eddie Gordo, as in the character that is both extremely stylish and easy to play as, the one a newcomer can just mash the controller with their elbow as and still pull off some really cool stuff. He's my second favourite character to play as in this game after Mitsuko. He's fast, powerful, and cool as hell, especially the move where he gets the opponent in rapid punches, and he's just really easy to fight the AI with. As a kid, after getting pasted by the AI as the likes of Gado and Greg, my first time playing as Long had me beat the entire game without losing a single round. Sadly, I didn't have that luck this time. It's no wonder Long topped the official popularity poll I mentioned when talking about Mitsuko. The developers were surprised and were even considering scrapping Long because they thought he was too plain, which I get. Just looking at him before he transforms, he does look more like a guy who could fit in any other fighting game more than the others. I don't think there's anything especially bloody raw about him visually compared to the rest. But then you see him in motion and actually play as him, and I get absolutely why he was the most popular. Long is the shit. That having been said, yeah, his original look is pretty plain. It's fine, I don't dislike it, but it is my least favourite look for him in the series. I will say I like the colours of his second costume, with the dark blue, far more than his other two though. After defeating all 8 characters in the game, we get the final boss, Yuriko no Nomura. We are introduced to her as a 9-year-old girl, but then she takes on her main fighting form. And on top of that, this form has its own beast form as a chimera. Yuriko is Mitsuko's kidnapped daughter, the girl who sacrificed her own chances of escape from Tylon to help Alice escape. Yuriko became one of Tylon's experiments, brainwashed, and her body transformed into an adult to become one of their super soldiers. Yuriko can be a challenge, but I didn't find her as difficult as other 3D fighting bosses of the era like Tekken 1 Heihachi or Tekken 2 Devil. The default state definitely fits for a boss character, the floating around instead of walking and running, throws that take you high up into the air, generating barriers to push you away in case you're doing too well up close. The colour scheme was not what I was expecting after only seeing her in black and white as a kid. However, her chimera form I find less impressive. Just not very interesting to look at, looks a bit like True Ogre's wimpier sibling. Also the fact her voice is just mooing cows in this form. She still has some intimidation factor though, the claws and the puking acid or whatever when she grabs you. Another thing that makes it unique is that her transformation is permanent. You cannot knock her out of it. And the stage actually changes when she transforms too, which is cool. So usually it's best to just hope the AI doesn't feel like transforming for a while. But as I've said many times before, I started with Bloody Roar 2, where Yuriko is a normal playable character who transforms into a regular animal and not a freakish chimera. When she wasn't on the playable roster when I first played this, it didn't cross my mind, because a lot of the second game's cast wasn't in. So I assumed she was first introduced there, alongside the likes of Stun and Jenny. But then I beat everyone else and saw Versus Yuriko. Then I see her transform twice into nothing I recognised from the second game. It was a shock. I think the best comparison was if you started Street Fighter with Alpha 2, got familiar with Sakura, then went back to Alpha 1 to discover she was actually that game's final boss all along and transformed into the devil itself. You'd probably be surprised. But I am very glad she's not dickhead hard. I didn't need 8 50-minute playthroughs because Yuriko alone took half an hour each time like some other fighting games have had. Now to finish her and get to those endings.
Time over!
Everyone gets an ending with some ugly CG screenshots even for the time, with some text overlaid. Yugo impresses Gado by reaching Tylon without any combat training. They discover Tylon's experimental beast soldiers, those whose conversions failed. They realise that if Yuji is in here, that must mean he is dead. Yugo swears to his father's grave that he will use the power he inherited from him to bring down those who killed him. Gado destroyed the Tylon building single-handedly, leaving just the basement. He declares his revenge for Yuji complete, knowing that while Yuji wouldn't agree with Gado's methods, this was the only way available to him. Gado was arrested for his actions, but his actions also led to the discovery of Tylon's secret lab where their experiments were performed. Enough evidence of Tylon's crimes was found to get Gado's charges dropped. Gado now sits on a park bench, not knowing how to live his life without the threat of death at every turn. This leads him back into taking part in combat missions, knowing the battlefield is where he belongs. Bakuryu brags about his power and endless amount of techniques, declaring himself the ultimate soldier. However, the experiments performed on him by Tylon to get this power left his body unstable. Bakuryu realises he was only ever a guinea pig as he dissolved into goo. That's canon, he's dead. The scientists who were working on Bakuryu realise that their methods of enhancing Bakuryu are a dead end, and they have to try a different approach for their next subject. Greg begs Yugo to join his circus, knowing Yugo has the appeal to draw in enough customers to save him from bankruptcy. Yugo does not care, but Greg keeps trying, saying that his athletic ability and his beast form would make him a huge star. Yugo still doesn't care and tells Greg to star in it himself. Greg never considered using his own beast form as an attraction and takes Yugo's dismissive comment seriously. And it works. Greg's circus is saved, and since we never see him again, I assume this ending is canon too, and he never appeared again because he achieved his only goal. Alice wakes up in bed in a regular home, realising she is late for school. Yuriko calls for her to hurry up, calling her sis. For her role in saving Yuriko from Tylon, Mitsuko adopted Alice since Alice has no family of her own. She fits into the family well, already feeling comfortable enough to see Yuriko as the embarrassing kid sister. Fox goes about the street killing ugly people for a laugh, but this one old woman he attacks has the smell of a zoanthrope, so he tries to goad her into transforming because he would enjoy killing her more that way. When she refuses, he goes in for the kill anyway. As she is dying, she knows Fox's real name, misspelled as Hans though. She begs forgiveness for being a terrible mother, as out of all the people on the planet he could have randomly killed for fun, it just happened to be his mother. The last we see of Hans in this series is him going mad after realising what he has done. He's never heard from again. Mitsuko saves Yuriko and promises her daughter that they will never be apart again. We next see them back home sometime later, where she is furious to see Yuriko still in bed on a school day, showing that their lives have gone back to normal. Long screams at the heavens to be free of his zoanthrope blood, feeling it to be a curse. His beast side asks him if he is sure he doesn't want that power and reminds him of what he can achieve with it. Long still refuses to listen, to which his beast side reminds him that this side of him separates him from normal humans and that his own destiny is still undecided. Long decides to hide away in a cave so that the rest of humanity will no longer have to live in fear of him. During those 8 playthroughs I unlocked a few extras. The first completion on default difficulty unlocks a menu for bonus options. All extras obtained by clearing arcade mode must be done on the default difficulty or higher. Big arms are unlocked by clearing arcade using no continues, which I did with Mitsuko. There are also big head and kids modes that I just seem to have, no unlock method is listed anywhere. Clearing arcade with Yugo lets me turn off the meters. With Alice I unlock a free camera mode. With Long I can turn off the lighting. With Gado I can disable blocking. With Mitsuko I can remove the walls. With Fox I can turn off the wall display. With Greg I can shrink the stages. With Bakuryu I can activate permanent regenerating health. And I can have after images on my characters while removing the backgrounds by clearing arcade as everyone. But there are still 3 more extras to unlock. First is clearing time attack mode in under 10 minutes. Time attack is 16 fights and I demolish all but one of them as Mitsuko. For some reason the AI Alice I had to fight 14 was a huge asshole and wasted several minutes. This meant I finished time attack only 9 seconds past the target. But it doesn't happen a second time and I go through all 16 fights in 6 minutes and 48 seconds. This unlocks a slant move which limits 3D movement to the shoulder buttons. Then there is winning 10 fights in survival mode. I do that once again as Mitsuko, going over 10 wins to 11 just to be on the safe side on my first try. This gets me big stage mode. The final unlock requires completing the game as Alice on difficulty level 6, the default is 4, without using any continues. This one took me an hour and a half. I tried getting good at Alice, but it wasn't good enough. So my strategy was to make matches 1 round, turn on big stages, lower the timer as far as I can, get 1 hit in and then just keep running away and jumping over the opponent when they need me to win by timeout. Of course it wasn't perfect as the opponent could get their hit in first and that was usually it for me. But after an hour and a half of trying, it finally worked. This got me the final unlockable Sailor Alice. This swaps Alice's costumes for 3 different school uniforms. Not worth the effort for such a generic costume if I'm honest. But that's Bloody Roar completed. It's a good game and a good start to the series, just not my favourite first game of the 3D fighting series. I enjoyed most of the characters at least a little, with Mitsuko and Long being so far above everyone else. It's a good speed, has AI that isn't too frustrating, and lets me pull off cool moves with ease. My biggest issue would be a lack of content compared to others of the time. The extras aren't much really, and after seeing all 8 endings, there isn't much to do, something later games definitely improve on. But if we're comparing the other 3D debuts I've looked at, I enjoyed it more than Tekken 1 and Virtua Fighter 1, but not as much as Dead or Alive 1 and nowhere near Soul Blade. So when it comes down to the final ranking, I had a hard time. I got stuck around the late 60s and early 70s. In the end I settled for 68th, above Kirby's Dream Land but below Spider-Man on the Dreamcast. Even now I'm still not sure, but this was the closest I could decide on. I'm really glad to do this one. I've wanted to start this series for years, but the first game was always a little too pricey for my tastes. But now I've bought it and played through it, I'm finally free to continue, so hopefully Bloody Roar 2 doesn't end up being too far away.